Did you know somewhere out there in the world of One Piece, there's characters out there that exist that are apparently not pirates, apparently not Revolutionary Army members, and characters that are not a member of the world government either that are one of the strongest people in the entire world? Because in the world government, when it comes to the Marines, there's a hierarchy. In the Marines, there's characters that are considered the highest fighters in the Marines. There's 3 admirals, right? But there was actually a point where there was slots that was vacant because one character getting promoted and one character leaving the Navy. So there was like 2 admirals slot. The character I'm going over in this video is somebody that's relatively new to the Marines, but somehow miraculously is at one of the highest ranks of all time in the Marines, kind of showing his power level. You telling me there's beings that's admiral level out there in the world that's not a pirate or Revolutionary Army member? Might I add that this guy is blind too? I mean, he even considers blindness to be a blessing in this terrible world in his opinion. That's crazy. He was drafted along with another admiral level being. So this world of One Piece has powerhouses out there that are unknown. This being I'm going over today is Fujitora. He's a Marine admiral. You can't be an admiral unless you're one of the best fighters in the entirety of the Marines. This proves that he's one of the best fighters if he's appointed as one of the 3 admirals. And just to give you a visual perspective of how high he is on the food chain, admiral rank is way above all these different ranks in the Marines. It's stated that the Marine admirals are the greatest military asset they have. A Navy admiral is somebody called a monster far and wide, proving he's one of the top tiers when it comes to the military forces in this One Piece universe. Other admirals, for example, are called the greatest power in the Navy. It's impressive that he's an admiral tier because most admirals have log-gear intangibility advantage. Fujitora just has a physical body and has gravity manipulation, and he's still ranked this high, meaning that Fujitora has to rely on defense and not just take it easy like some of these other admirals, because if you don't have this special technique known as Haki, how you gonna punch somebody made of light? You know what I mean? Fujitora doesn't have this advantage. He has a physical body you can hit, so he has to block the old-fashioned way. He's a character that carries around a sword, so there's definitely implications he has melee fighting skills or knowledge. Due to his status being an extremely high rank in the Marines, there's techniques certain characters know by default in this universe. Like Fujitora is able to harness his inner will or inner energy to basically get super senses. All vice admirals or above have this technique. Fujitora is higher than vice admiral, so of course he has this technique of super senses. I mean, the guy literally can't see, but he's still one of the highest ranking characters. So it makes sense that his observation Haki has to be insane, to the point where it's almost like he has that daredevil vision. Like he can see outlines of people basically via his Haki being so strong. It's almost like he can see, but he can't actually see facial expressions, stuff like that. I mean, I guess this is how the writer implied that this is how he sees the world. Thanks to observation Haki, he can pretty much see shapes and stuff. So it's almost like he still can see, just can't see no facial expressions or nothing. He can see the shapes of attacks or bodies coming at him and stuff. His senses are so sharp, he was able to sense stuff before it even happened. Haki is a latent power that everybody has, but not everybody trains it so well to where they can use it as attacks and stuff. Fujitora is one of them that has this and can use it as attacks. You get so good with it, you can even use it and blast it outwardly or hit you from farther range. Ornament Haki, aka invisible armor around your hands, helps you be able to hit people that are kind of intangible, beings that have fluid bodies, like Logis he can hit, meaning that he can hit beings that are actually made of stuff that's untouchable like light. Fujitora has both these Hakis, observation and ornament. It can extend to the weapons, like pretty much make your weapons close to indestructible. Like a random example would be like, say if somebody picked up a weak rusted sword, somebody can use their ornament Haki, put armor around the sword to where a rusted weak sword that usually wouldn't be able to do nothing powerful is all of a sudden powerful thanks to his ornament Haki enhancing it. We know Fujitora uses a blade, so he can amplify his strikes with this armor around his blade and stuff like that, and put armor around his blade, enhancing his cuts and things like that. He can coat his blade in armor to where his blade's a lot harder than usual, which is natural for a Navy admiral to increase his cutting power. So yeah, he's an admiral for a reason. There's like these mysterious fruits in One Piece world where you eat it and you get superpowers. It costs you though. You got a weakness. You can't go in the ocean or swim in the salt water and stuff like that. Fujitora has one of these abilities. His ability is the ability to manipulate gravity, so he can pretty much crush you. And he's very versatile with these techniques because he's got training with it. He can use gravity to pretty much make himself float or make other things float, like telekinesis kind of. He can blast stuff sideways with his gravity and has absurd range with his gravity to where he can pull meteors from the sky and even push them off of him when they fall on him. So realistically, he can just sit back and relax, float in the air while he's standing on some gravity thing he has floating. So in a way, he has blast power. Like say he could blast with horizontal gravity to send a rock towards you, right? He can use the environment as his advantage to hit you like this, or he can place the gravity on you to where you can't hardly move while he's just sitting there chilling. And then he can just throw a rock at you like that too. When it comes to physical strength, obviously he's above your average human when it comes to physical strength, just because of his sheer size compared to average size humans in this world. He obviously has to have more strength than your average human just because he's bigger than your average human when it comes to height and stuff. So yeah, he's a massive human compared to other normal sized humans. Someone that's a part of the Straw Hat crew, Zoro himself, you can see his size compared to Fujitora. You can see his size difference compared to an average soldier, so you know he's way bigger than your average soldier. Look how small everybody looks compared to him. So this is something you got to consider. We've seen him physically block attacks with his blade from physical superhuman beings like Doflamingo, for example. Strong One Piece fighters like Sabo. We've seen him physically with his sword block and parry attacks from beings like this. This is the same guy that can effortlessly curb stomp Vice Admiral rank beings, a Vice Admiral being a rank below Admiral, so let you know how much stronger Fujitora is than your standard Vice Admiral. Sabo couldn't just do this to somebody in a one rank higher. It lets you know the gap between Vice Admiral and Admiral level for the most part. Not counting exceptions like this guy. He's above your Vice Admiral rank, even though he's a Vice Admiral. He's even gotten a scuffle with the main character himself, Luffy, before Gear 5 and all that stuff, before all that stuff. This is Luffy 2 years ago. This is Luffy 2 years later, and he's a lot stronger. To give you an idea of Fujitori's strength, Luffy in this same arc can one-punch giants that are this huge compared to his own self-size, beings that are actually mountain-sized compared to the whole place. Luffy's strikes can shatter these beings that have mountain-sized limbs, beings that's limbs can fold a town. But when Luffy tries to attack Fujitora, he can block it with his blade. One could say this is a mixture of super strength and Haki, one could say. It's a case like this that prove Fujitora isn't just only about his gravity, that his physical attributes are pretty strong too, along with his Haki. Being able to imbue armor around his sword to make his strikes better and stuff. Okay, on this island, right, like you see the buildings right here, right? You see this big old Royal Palace Plateau. This thing is dang near mountain size because look at Pika, he's a mountain size being that Luffy damaged. Beings like this that Luffy can damage, Fujitora countered it. You gotta respect his strength. He can also react to these superhumanly fast beings. Zoro and Luffy are ridiculously fast. He can block attacks from Zoro, who's superhumanly strong, and is a being that can cut mountain men made of stone in multiple pieces, spam mountain slashing attacks. Fujitora blocking attacks from beings like Zoro, who's also a part of Luffy's crew. One can argue that with his just Haki enhanced attacks, he could slice mountains up if he wanted to, slicing one down the middle, matching superhuman beings like Zoro that can easily cut mountains. He's an admiral, highest rank, it makes sense. Even when Zoro, as strong as Zoro is, did a long-range sword attack against Fujitora, Fujitora was still able to block it despite it doing all this damage to the ground and stuff. Because we all know Zoro is a superhuman swordsman that can cut mountains. First of all, there's beings that are nowhere near his rank and power level. Beings way down in the captain rank. A very strong captain, might I add, is able to, thanks to Haki, of course, is able to damage literally an island itself, and a being that has limbs the size of mountains. Beings that are nowhere near Admiral level have the Haki and physical ability, punching power, to blow away mountain-sized structures into smithereens. What the heck do you think an Admiral can do physically? He can't be just an Admiral just because of purely from his superpowers. When you see him block attacks from beings like Sabo with his sword and not get overpowered physically, he's blocking an attack from a being that's a grown adult version of this guy. Like, this guy as a kid was strong enough to do one-handed older push-ups as a kid, and Fujitora was fighting a more adult version of him and blocking his attacks, so you know Fujitora has to be superhumanly strong. This kind of stuff also applies for Fujitora's fighting speed. This guy can't see, and he's still able to react to this being thanks to observation Haki, being able to observe his surroundings, blocking multiple attacks from Luffy. Now let's talk about his destructive, one could say his blast power with his gravity. How much gravity can he exert downward on you? How much blunt force can he produce this way? Same with going in other directions. How much force can he produce upward? Like, it's just straight up blast power. When his own underlings were starting to attack people, he can hold them down with his gravity so they won't do nothing to civilians. They was being controlled by strings, basically. This is where he gets really destructive, and I would say he got some flashy feats like this. Being able to put gravity on beings to where they can't move, to where they get basically flat on the ground. He's going to get crushed because all the weight he's producing is too heavy. He produced enough blast power to where it looked like a darn near bottomless pit. Just to get perspective, this is him right here. You see the size of this hole he made. We've seen how his gravity can affect thick rocks he can crumble apart just with casual force. Superhuman beings like Law, for example, he can kind of hold in place for a temporary amount of time. I've already brought up Zoro a few times, but yeah, Zoro, he can put his gravity on super strong beings like Zoro to where Zoro can't resist the weight. pretty much drilling him into the ground. When it comes to lifting heavy weight, Zoro's the type of guy, even before the big 2-year time skip, he could lift up entire buildings. So if Fujitora has the blast power to force somebody that can hold up buildings to the ground, it implies he can blow away a building if he really wanted to, with his gravity power output, or one could say his blast power. Using his gravity, he can lift a lot of weight, lifting his whole battleship towards the Straw Hats in this particular occasion, might I add, while tossing meteors while he's sitting there relaxing and eating. So we know his gravity has enough raw strength to lift up thousands of tons, because he can lift up entire ships that are decently big. Fujitora seems to have very far range when it comes to his power, because even if he's way down on the floor of the ground on the planet, his power of gravity can reach all the way into space to pull meteors all the way to the ground, so he can use as a weapon. Like, how do you escape somebody that can reach you this far? Couldn't he reach you from around the world or something with his gravity ability? If he can pull something from outer space and hit with enough raw power, it's like a little mini nuke, to where after he made it land, there was like a huge crater on the big chunk of the island. And it can give you a perspective on how much land he destroyed. When you look at the land they're standing on, it's unharmed, because they protected themselves from the meteor, of course. It lets you know how thick of an area Fujitora destroyed. In the anime, this is how they made this big old ditch look. Like, dang near looked like a bottomless pit that Fujitora made. Do you have any doubts that he can delete mountains at this point? I mean, he was able to produce this much power on the spot, and he said that's a warm-up. It being a warm-up wasn't an exaggeration, because he's casually eating food while a ship is flying. He's the one holding up the ship and spamming meteors while he's on the ship. I mean, couldn't he technically do something like this and just spam and shower meteors and just level an entire island like that if he wished? This right here is an example of pretty much how he can level an entire town with one swoop, when there was like this big old bird cage. You know, Doflamingo had like a big old cage around the whole island. Fujitora summoned a meteor, for example, and the sliced parts of his meteors was causing massive destruction to buildings in the entire area. One could say a small town was suffering, and he was accidentally hurting civilians, so he kind of had to chill out. I mean, heck, him and Sabo battling was pretty much leveling this little small part of the town. This one, Fujitora reveals that he can do gravity attacks sideways, which basically proves he can level multiple buildings with his blast. Flattening these buildings is his handiwork. Sideways gravity technique. There was this being whose hand was like the size of a town or a mountain or whatever. This mountain-sized level being known as Pika, he made himself a mountain-sized stone avatar, basically. I've already brought up in this video that Zoro can cut up this mountain-sized being into little bitty pieces. All of this mountain-sized debris was falling on the people, and this is where Fujitora gets involved. So basically, when a mountain-sized being is about to fall on civilians, Fujitora can use his gravity and push this heavy weight away. All this weight he can push away, mountain-sized structures. Pretty much proven if there was a mountain falling towards him, he would have the raw power to slow it down or just blow it away, lift it up, push it sideways. Yep, I'm bringing up him fighting Luffy again here. Like in this occasion, we see them blast gravity against Luffy, and it pretty much leveled the rubble around the area. Like, he just did all of this, and you see Fujitora right here. See, what Fujitora just blasted through was one of these humongous rocks that looked like the size of mountains that was surrounding the entire island. There's like a whole bunch of rocks this big surrounding the whole area. Fujitora can split between these big things like this. Like, at this point, it's pretty obvious. Splitting mountains in half is just another day in the life for characters in One Piece. This is what Fujitora did. So yeah, his blast power is crazy. Fujitora destroyed a big chunk of this. This is a country, or one could say an island, that has multiple mountain-sized structures within it, a whole bunch of buildings, houses, and debris and stuff of that such. A lot of this stuff got messed up during the battle on Dressrosa with Doflamingo, because Doflamingo has the power of strings. So he put a whole bunch of strings that were super durable, not normal strings obviously, that were strong enough to like pretty much crush in the different buildings or places within this island. So thanks to this bird cage that Doflamingo made shrinking down, it destroyed a lot of buildings because it was pretty much crushing everything in its path. Like this bird cage was skinny, like all these strings was kind of keeping everybody inside. And once this cage shrunk down, a lot of the surrounding area got destroyed. You see where this is going. The Admiral Fujitora can use his gravity to pick up all this surrounding rubble in the air. They straight up say all the rubble of the kingdom is gathering in the air. The remains of the battle left behind. Did I also mention during his entire battle with Luffy, all this debris, for the most part, stayed in the air while they was fighting still. So it lets you know that this must be easy for him if he can fight Luffy while holding all of this in the air with his gravity. This is basically like telekinesis, y'all. When you can basically choose what you want to affect with your gravity and what not to affect with it, it's like telekinesis, being able to lift it up, down. You see what I mean? Like when Luffy got snatched up, notice all this debris is still in the air. When Admiral Fujitora blasted this mountain-sized structure apart, the debris is still in the air. Keep in mind, the debris is still floating over this the whole country and about to destroy these ships. This still doesn't seem to be nowhere near his limit because he just kept this stuff floating above these ships for a decently extended amount of time, a few panels, honestly. But it does eventually drop. Yo, by the way, if you didn't know, all the rubble he was lifting up, one of the many pieces of his rubble was Pika, the mountain-sized entity. He did indeed lift up along with the rest of the rubble. When it comes to how much he can lift, this proves that he can not only lift up mountains, but he can, one could say, technically lift up the largest mountain, since he lifted up a mountain man on top of the debris, meaning that he clearly lifted more than the weight of just one mountain with ease. Might I add, he held it in the air for a long time, as it shows it was effortless. How big of a mountain do you think Fujitora can lift up? Do you think he could lift up Mount Everest, basically? Fujitora, being an admiral, him being able to lift billions of tons definitely seems within the realm of possibility. But he's one of those characters I think Oda is saving for later. We haven't really seen his full potential. Fujitora had to get in a fight with some members of the Revolutionary Army. The only thing really holding him back from really just giving people hands is the collateral damage of his raw power. Depending on where admirals fight, some places might not be as convenient as other places. Like certain places, he can't just call down a meteor strike. But he said that's a terrible idea because we're in the home of the gods. It depends on the certain areas they're at. Two admirals can't really go all out like they want to. This should be obvious at this point, but whatever other admirals can do when it comes to just raw power output, even though they have all different abilities, they should be comparable when it comes to just the raw power levels in general. Fujitora actually fought another admiral off screen. You can kind of see the collateral of what happens when two admirals fight. They damage each other. You see he got bandages on and everything. What are the limits of the Admiral Fujitora? It has yet to be seen, really. What's the limit of the size of the meteor he can pull down from space? We don't really know that, right? I'm pretty sure we all can agree he can lift up mountain-sized things. Things this big, for example, he could easily lift up and toss them or blast through them. But doesn't it make you wonder what's the biggest meteor he could pull down? Could he pull one down the size of an entire island, or one near the size of an island and crush it? Have it come down with absurd force? It's just a lot to think about when it comes to Fujitora's full potential. Could Fujitora sink an island, putting pressure on it and sink it into the water if you want it? What are the limits of the Haki he can use? Like, we know he can put invisible armor around his sword, but can he do the thing that Yonkos do? Like put Conqueror's Haki infusing into his weapon to make his attacks? Split the sky, like certain characters that have certain levels of Haki can do. They can hit each other without necessarily having to make contact because they can make invisible armor around their weapon so much to where their actual physical weapon doesn't actually have to hit. I mean, we've seen other Admiral level beings like Kizaru fighting Luffy, who's a Yonko at this time period, able to trade blows with him. I mean, don't quote me, guys, but for him to be a top tier, there's a high likelihood that Fujitora probably can imbue his attacks with Conqueror's Haki coating, similar to what Yonko's can do, so there's a great chance he can actually split the sky with their Haki infused attacks, kind of similar to what Yonko or Emperors can do. And, you know, people online have calculated, not my calculations, people online, you can simply Google it, the calculations of how much power it would take for somebody to split this much of clouds in the sky, being that far away from clouds. They calculated that energy needed to split the sky, like how One Piece characters do, would take multi-continental type of destruction, being able to level multiple continent-sized structures. I mean, he's a top tier. I wouldn't doubt it. We just haven't really seen him do nothing like this yet. His full potential is yet to be explored, but he's an admiral. Admirals can kind of slugfest with Yonkos. You get the idea. I want to hear your thoughts below. Respect Fujitora, though. I'm glad you are enjoying your time on the channel. Make sure you check out the playlist on the channel to see other How Strong videos. If you like what this channel is offering, make sure you hit that subscribe button, and I will see you guys later.